While Brian Rolapp stood at a podium making the biggest announcement in PGA Tour history, the sport's most important player was somewhere else entirely. Not injured, not resting. Rory McIlroy was walking the fairways of Royal Birkdale with Nick Faldo, scouting lines for the Open Championship. Let that sink in for a second. The PGA Tour had just unveiled its most ambitious restructuring plan in decades. A two-tier system, a championship series, a complete reimagining of what professional golf looks like from 2028 onwards. And the one player this entire vision needs, the player whose name sells tickets, moves sponsorships, and gives the whole thing credibility, wasn't there. That wasn't a scheduling accident. That was a statement. And here's what makes this story genuinely uncomfortable for the PGA Tour. They can't do anything about it, because what Rory is doing goes deeper than one skipped event. There's a pattern building here, a quiet, calculated withdrawal from everything the tour is asking of him. And once you understand why he's doing it, you'll realize this isn't drama. This is a man who made a decision, and nobody at PGA Tour headquarters has the power to reverse it. Here's what I think. Rory earned the right to do exactly what he's doing, but I want to know where you stand. Drop it in the comments. Is Rory right, or is he hurting the tour he once saved? And if you want honest PGA Tour coverage that actually explains what's happening behind the headlines, subscribe. We're building something here for real golf fans, because what Rory said publicly, just 1 week before Rolapp's biggest moment, was the kind of thing you cannot take back. To understand why that image hit the golf world so hard, you need to understand what Rolapp was actually announcing that day. This wasn't a minor policy update. Rolapp unveiled a complete two-tier redesign of the PGA Tour, a championship series at the top, a challenger series beneath it, promotion and relegation, purses starting at $20 million per event, a system built to make professional golf look like the Premier League of world sport, starting in 2028. There was one name above every other on that list of players this vision needed. So picture the room. Rolapp mid-announcement, cameras rolling, Tiger Woods standing nearby lending credibility to the whole moment. And somewhere across the Atlantic, Rory McIlroy walking a links course with Nick Faldo, completely unbothered by any of it. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. What made it even sharper was what Rory had said publicly just 1 week before that announcement. Standing in front of reporters at the US Open at Shinnecock Hills, McIlroy didn't hold back. He looked at Rolapp's entire Challenger Series concept and called it a glorified Korn Ferry event. Not a concern, not a gentle criticism, a dismissal from the most important player in the game, aimed directly at the commissioner's defining vision 1 week before its official launch. Rolapp had spent months building toward that announcement. Player meetings, structural negotiations, securing enough internal support to go public with confidence. And then, with the whole golf world watching, his most valuable asset stood at a microphone and told everyone the lower tier was second class. The timing was not a coincidence. Everyone in professional golf understood that. Rolapp moved quickly to contain it. He called Rory directly. What came out of that conversation seemed to close the story, except it opened a much bigger one. After that private call, Rory released a statement. Measured, diplomatic. He called the announcement a positive step for professional golf. The golf media moved on. Rolapp exhaled. Problem solved, it appeared. Except it wasn't solved at all. Statements are easy. Actions tell the real story. While Rory was releasing carefully worded public messages, his actual behavior on the ground was pointing in an entirely different direction. He skipped the Travelers Championship, the very event anchoring Rolapp's announcement week. He had already skipped the RBC Heritage earlier in the season. Before that, the Cadillac Championship. 3 signature events. Gone. Events the tour specifically built to attract its biggest names. Events with $20 million purses. Events that exist specifically because players like Rory are supposed to show up and make them matter. He wasn't showing up. Every single absence sent the same message Rory couldn't say in a public statement. And when you line them up together, the Korn Ferry comment, the Birkdale trip during Rolapp's announcement, 3 skipped signature events, the picture that forms is impossible to misread. But here is where it gets even more serious. McIlroy is on pace to finish the 2026 season with just 14 PGA Tour starts. The minimum required to maintain full PGA Tour membership is 15, 1 event short, a single tournament separating Rory McIlroy from technically breaching his membership obligations. For any other player on tour, that number triggers an automatic penalty. No conversations, no exceptions. The rulebook is unambiguous about it. What the PGA Tour is planning to do about that one missing event is where this story gets genuinely explosive, and it involves a decision that has fans absolutely furious. Before getting there, something critical needs to be understood, because if you look at Rory's behavior in isolation, skipping events, dismissing the new structure, operating entirely on his own schedule, it's easy to frame him as an ungrateful superstar throwing his weight around simply because he can. That framing misses everything that happened before it. Go back to 2022 and 2023. When LIV Golf launched and began pulling players away with Saudi money, the PGA Tour needed a face, someone credible, articulate, and respected enough to stand in front of cameras week after week and make the case that the tour was worth defending. They found exactly that person in Rory McIlroy. He did everything asked of him: press conferences, player meetings, public statements, interviews where he pushed back hard against LIV, against Greg Norman, against the entire Saudi project. His own preparation suffered for it. Major championships, the only currency that truly defines a legacy in this sport, were taking a back seat while Rory spent his energy protecting an institution that wasn't technically his responsibility to protect. He did it anyway, because he believed in what the tour stood for. Then came June 2023. The PGA Tour announced a framework agreement with the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the very organization bankrolling LIV Golf. The organization Rory had spent 18 months publicly dismantling in interview after interview. The tour had been negotiating in secret, and when the deal became public, Rory McIlroy found out the same way every journalist and casual fan did, through a news announcement. Not a phone call, not a private briefing, not the basic professional courtesy of telling the man who had sacrificed the most on their behalf before the rest of the world found out. His words at the RBC Canadian Open the following day were raw in a way that polished athletes rarely allow themselves to be. "It's hard for me to not sit up here and feel somewhat like a sacrificial lamb. I've put myself out there, and this is what happens." He resigned from the PGA Tour Policy Board shortly after, quietly. No dramatic press conference, no public war of words, just a man who had drawn a line and walked away from the side of it that had burned him. That resignation was the moment the relationship between Rory McIlroy and the PGA Tour fundamentally changed, and everything happening in 2026 flows directly from it. The version of Rory that emerged from that betrayal plays golf on his own terms. Full stop. Not the tour's terms, not a commissioner's vision, not a schedule designed by a committee in a boardroom somewhere. His terms. He started reducing his appearances, focusing on the majors that define legacies, choosing the events that suit him rather than the ones the tour needs him at. "I play my schedule," he said ahead of the US Open this year, "and I'll continue to play my schedule, which is getting less and less as the years go on." He went further than that. He called himself a part-timer, and he said it without apology or embarrassment. "I've been doing this a long time. I've been on tour more than half of my life at this point, so I'll pick and choose my spots. Does it make it harder to win the FedEx Cup? Absolutely. But I'm okay with that, because it brings balance to my life and lets me enjoy things outside the game." That is the real "I'm not playing" moment. Not a dramatic ultimatum delivered at a press conference. Something quieter and far more permanent. A man who gave everything to an institution, got blindsided by it at the worst possible moment, and decided he would never again place its needs above his own. The PGA Tour, fully aware of what Rory went through to get to this point, now finds itself completely unable to punish him for the conclusion he reached. So instead of punishing him, they did something that has created an entirely different crisis, one that strikes at the fairness of everything Rolapp is trying to build. Commissioner Rolapp is planning to use a discretionary clause buried inside the PGA Tour rulebook, an extenuating circumstances provision, to exempt Rory McIlroy from the 15-event minimum penalty. Rory finishes one event short of the requirement. Under standard enforcement, that costs him membership status for the following season. Under this exemption, nothing happens. No penalty, no reduced status, no consequence of any kind. The reaction from fans and media was sharp and immediate. One response that spread widely captured the frustration precisely. All players have the freedom to manage their schedules around majors, but not all players have the freedom to fall short of the minimum requirement and face zero penalty for it. The anger sharpened further when people started bringing up Martin Kaymer. A decade ago, Kaymer failed to meet the exact same minimum event requirement. The PGA Tour did not invoke any discretionary clause on his behalf. No extenuating circumstances were identified. He lost his membership for the 2016 season without exception. Kaymer, a former world number one, a US Open champion, a Ryder Cup hero who had carried European golf on his shoulders, not protected by a discretionary clause, not given a quiet exemption, gone for a season. Rory McIlroy, in 2026, protected. The double standard is not hidden. It is not ambiguous. It sits in plain sight, and Rolapp signed off on it, which forces a question the entire golf world is now sitting with. If the commissioner can set aside the rules for his most commercially valuable asset, what does a rule actually mean for everyone else? Because underneath all of this sits the central tension that makes Rolapp's position genuinely precarious. He is trying to build a new era of professional golf, a structured, commercially credible tour that can compete with LIV, attract younger audiences, and grow the global game across every market. That vision requires one thing above everything else: trust. Players need to trust that the system is fair. Fans need to trust that the same rules apply regardless of world ranking or sponsor value. The entire structure collapses without that foundation. Rolapp is a skilled operator. After the Korn Ferry fallout, he got Rory on the phone and within days had a supportive public statement in circulation. That ability to manage his biggest personalities is genuinely impressive. Getting people aligned behind his vision, even people who publicly opposed it, is a real talent. Getting a player to release a statement, though, is not the same as getting that player to show up. Rory McIlroy standing at Birkdale during the tour's biggest announcement of the decade is worth more than any carefully worded paragraph sent to a press office. Actions have always spoken louder in professional sport than anything said into a microphone. Golf Monthly's analysts put the power dynamic plainly. The PGA Tour needs McIlroy more than McIlroy needs the PGA Tour. Imposing penalties would damage the product. Granting exemptions damages the integrity. There is no clean path available. Rolapp is caught between protecting the rulebook and protecting the ratings, and every decision he makes in that position sets a precedent for how the next one gets handled. That is the reality sitting underneath the Championship Series vision. The two-tier structure, the promotion and relegation, the $20 million purses, all of it depends on the assumption that the sport's biggest names will be present, invested, and playing week after week in the top tier. Rory McIlroy's 2026 is a live, ongoing test of whether that assumption holds. Right now, it isn't holding. 14 events, 3 skipped signature events, a Birkdale scouting trip timed perfectly against the tour's most important press conference, a Korn Ferry dismissal 1 week before the official launch, an exemption that bends the rules everyone else plays by. Every single one of those facts points in the same direction. Rory McIlroy is not refusing loudly. He is not giving fiery press conferences or calling out Rolapp by name in interviews. He is doing something the PGA Tour finds far harder to manage. He is simply living by his own rules, quietly and consistently, and the Tour is letting him, because the alternative is worse. Can Rolapp build a new era of professional golf when its most important player is already operating outside the system, and the Tour itself keeps making exceptions to accommodate him? That is the question every serious golf fan needs to sit with, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Drop your answer in the comments below. Does Rory have every right to do exactly this, or is he slowly pulling the foundations out from under something the sport badly needs? If this is the kind of honest, detailed golf coverage you've been looking for, subscribe, because this story has more chapters left in it than anyone is admitting right now.